Hey guys, it's Zack and we're executing the Special Forces Journey podcast right now, okay? And today's episode, we're going through SUT, or Squad and Unit Tactics. If you don't know what that is, it's because it's no longer there, and it's now called TacSkills, okay? So I'm dialing in and exactly how it went for us, and a lot of dudes failing. It was a miserable time back then. Some of the Cadre hated us. But once again, they still have this phase, but now it's called TacSkills. If you're lost and you're like, what in the shit did I just land on? Go back, watch the rest of our episodes. I'm detailing and chronologically describing each of the different phases that I went through on the path to earning my Green Beret. See ya.
Hello, and welcome to the Operators Association podcast. I'm your host, former Green Beret, Zack Hughes. In the previous episodes, we've gone through what it looks like when you join the Army to become a Green Beret candidate, going through all the iterations of basic training, airborne school, subsequently moving to North Carolina, checking into Fort Bragg, heading to the preparation course, and then after that, going directly to selection, going through selection, everything that entails, and then completing selection, being picked up, and getting ready to move forward with actually being allowed to train to be a Green Beret. That's where we're going to kick this thing off. You dive in not only to those things, but you also really hone in on all the react to contacts, squad attacks, break contact, combat patrols, ambush patrols, all the different types of ambushes. It is how to move effectively in the woods during war. That's what SUT is. You get really granular in how to do a patrol base, how to prepare for a patrol, how to do recon patrols, how security patrols look, how to do a raid in an urban environment, how to do a raid in an open environment, how to do a raid in a rural environment. SUT absolutely sets you up for success in terms of being a proficient Green Beret and leading troops in the battlefield. And this is why a lot of guys that become Green Berets don't want to go to Ranger School, because Ranger School is SUT, but frankly, a little bit more dumbed down, a little bit harder on your body, a little bit worse mentally for you because they just tell you you're an idiot all the time and talk down to you and you're not an adult. And you don't get the level of knowledge that you get in SUT in terms of squad and unit tactics. One of my favorite portions of SUT was urban movement. We got so detailed with how to move in an urban environment, really brush over a lot of different things in basic training and some of the other things in training in general. And when you get to SUT, you spend so much time on each of these things I just rattled off and then way more. And urban movement for me was just so much fun. I think that CQB is a lot of fun, which is close quarters battle, which is, clearing rooms, shooting guys as you come in, direct action type stuff. But urban movement for me was really interesting because up until that point, all we did was walk in the woods. And now we're in like these mock cities and we're learning how to strategically take down direct action missions in an urban environment, which is completely different than doing it in the woods. The land is going to absolutely dictate how everything goes. So it's a lot of fun. You get into anti-armor ambushes, you do some helicopter stuff, you work with some security forces. You have a foreign country come in during SUT. We had a guy from Afghanistan, one of the lieutenants from the Afghan army and the special forces came in. Almost every SUT platoon has a foreign country diplomat come in, or a soldier from that, for that matter, and they go through SUT with you. For me, SUT was during the winter. It was February. We got like 18 inches of snow one day. So we got to all put on, you can put on all the clothes you want. Opposite of selection, where everything is told to you and you have to do what you're told. In SUT, I would have MREs in my pocket. I would just be walking around grazing, eating food as we were doing all the stuff we were doing. I was drinking as much water as possible. If it was cold, I was putting on jackets. I was putting on thicker boots, better socks, waterproof pants when we were walking through the snow. You can prepare like you couldn't have done during selection because you're an adult now and the stakes are high and you've got to be preparing and understanding your equipment and really being able to be successful in the woods. A lot of people fail SUT. It's not easy. You have to do a graded patrol. They're going to teach you how to do all these squad ambushes or team ambushes, and they're going to put you in a leadership position. So you've got a 12-man team. Well, there's a captain, there's a team sergeant, there's an Alpha and Bravo team leader. And Alpha and Bravo team leader is probably going to be where you're graded if you're an 18 X-ray. If you're higher enlisted, you'll be graded as probably a team sergeant or some platoon operation. But basically, as an 18 X-ray who's an E4 at the highest, you're going to be rated as an Alpha or Bravo team leader. Alpha team leader really conducts the operation in terms of direct action. And the Bravo team leader really works on MWE, which is men, weapons, and equipment. So accountability, the patrol base, things of that nature. You're going to learn this very, very detailed, but you have to not blow it. And the problem is that after you've been going for 20 hours, 18 hours, you get plenty of sleep when you're back in the bay, but when you're out doing these exercises, you don't. And when you're graded, you definitely don't, because you're in patrol base operations and you're working out of these patrol bases to become a more efficient soldier and be graded. So it's 50% security overnight. Doesn't matter what the weather is. Your 12-man team has a mission and you go execute and you're graded on that. So you come to a point where you're going to rest overnight. Everybody gets in a patrol base. If you're in charge, you make sure that everybody's at 50% security. So what that means is one guy's on security, the guy next to him sleeping. One guy's on security, the guy next to him sleeping. And everybody's positioned correctly. You're not just sitting around in a circle. There's very distinct areas that they have to cover and angles that they have to be accountable for. And if somebody blows it and the cadre come up and find out, well, guess what? If you're in charge, you failed your patrol. Much like Ranger School, the ability to lead people when they're exhausted and when it doesn't matter to them is very important. And that's important in Afghanistan as well, because most of the time the Afghans aren't as in tune with combat as we are. So you've got to be able to lead them all the time. And it's very similar to having these guys that are super, super exhausted and it's not their turn to be the leaders. So they're just kind of phased out. You do squad tactics and you do platoon-based tactics, platoon being 4 squads or 3 squads sometimes. I randomly was chosen to be the team sergeant in a platoon activity, one of our first combined graded exercises. And what I didn't know is that I wasn't being graded for it, and there was some other stuff going on, but they were like, okay, Specialist Hughes, you're up, team sergeant, which is obviously an E8 position that I was not anywhere near qualified to do. Typically they'll pick, you're in SUT with the captains that came from West Point, with the E5s to E7s that are from Ranger Battalion or from the infantry. These guys that really understand this stuff, they've been doing it for a long time, some of them over a decade. So they're going to go into these leadership positions. They're going to be the team leader. They're going to be the team sergeant in this mock scenario and be graded for that. And you're going to be the Alpha or the Bravo team leader, ideally. So when he said Zack team sergeant, Zack platoon sergeant, I was like, great. I guess I'm going to recock SUT after I fail this. I got in there, made a plan, started talking to the guys, started getting yelled at because we weren't moving fast enough. We started walking, and it's like 60 people that I'm in charge of, and we're walking to a certain target that we plotted, and we were getting yelled at the whole time because we weren't moving fast enough. We walked probably about 100 meters, and a Humvee with a machine gun pulled up and ambushed us, and we had to react to contact and then clear that, which we failed because I didn't know what I was doing, and really nobody knew what they were doing because it was the first one. Basically, I got all of our guys killed for the most part. It was a complete disaster. I was really focused on squad tactics at the team level, 12 guys, not platoon sergeant at the 60-man level tactics at all. That wasn't a position for me to be graded. That was somebody else's graded position, either the team leader or something like that. They just threw me in because the cadre member happened to know my name and I happened to be standing there. And he knew we were only going to be walking a few hundred meters and we were going to get attacked and then we were going to have to do that. So that's why he was yelling at us to hurry up. You don't know that going in. You're like, oh my gosh, we got to hurry, da-da-da-da. And you want to do everything 100% correctly because you have no idea what's going on in the background. I was so focused on all of that because I wanted to make it perfect. And the cadre member was like, whatever, Zack. In his head, he's thinking, whatever, Zack, like, you're not graded on this. Hurry up and go. I just want to see what this captain's going to do when you guys get ambushed here in just a couple seconds. So it was interesting to think back on that after it was all said and done. I absolutely failed that. I think by the end of SUT, if I was put in that position, I would have done fine. As my first graded right out of the gates, that was way, way above my head. I was like swimming, trying to keep up as we were walking, figuring things out, telling people what to do. Way over my head. But you start to get it. You kind of get in tune after you do all these recocks. I mean, you do these endlessly. Ambush, recock, ambush, recock, ambush, recock, all overnight on nods with weapons and equipment. Ambush, recock, during the day, ambush, recock. And then you do reconnaissance, and then you recock and do it again. Reconnaissance, and then you recock and do it again. Linear ambush, V-shaped ambush, L-shaped ambush. You do these so many times by the end, by the time that you're going to get graded. If you've been paying attention, you should be fine. And I was fine. I got 2 real graded exercises, both Alpha Team Leader and Bravo Team Leader, and I passed both of them. A lot of guys don't pass because they're not paying attention deeply. At night, when we were back in our bays, if you're not going out and doing it, you'll go out for 2 days and you'll come back for 1 because you've got to get your equipment, you got to get more MREs, you got to get more water, you got to clean the weapons. You just got some stuff that you got to do. You got some cleanup and maintenance. So you get about a day, sometimes 2 days, depending on how long you were gone, to come back and really just get all your stuff together. And at night after that, I was in our book, our SUT handbook that I know some of you guys have and have seen. The one that you can buy on Amazon is the one you use during this course. And I'm like, everybody's sleeping and I've got a red lens and I'm reading through it because I didn't really feel confident that I was going to pass it because I didn't have it really mastered and I was just struggling with it. I thought I really wasn't, but you just kind of freak out, and that's what you need to be doing when you get there. SUT is very serious. Where IUW was concepts, pass all the gates that you should be able to pass easily, understand what unconventional warfare is, get an idea of what Green Berets do and how they're different. SUT is battle drills and principles of patrolling and movement formations and patrol bases and all of this really, really, really granular level unit tactics that you've got to learn and master as a leader. This is the only shot. This is the first really, really hard course that you have in the Special Forces journey. And you've got to understand all this stuff at a high level because this is the basics of being a Green Beret. You're going to use this stuff that you learn in every phase that you go to. When you go to MOS phase, well, you're going to get tested on your MOS, but you're also going to go out in the woods and get tested on your MOS while you're doing all these other things, while you're attacking, while you're breaking contact, while you're setting up a patrol base, while you're doing a raid. You've got to do your job as an MOS, but you've also got to do all these other things, and you're still graded on that. During SERE School, same thing. You're tasked with doing patrol bases, contacts, breaking contracts, planning. All of these things come into account in every phase you go to after SUT, so you have to put the time in to making sure that you crush them. The end of SUT is pretty fun. You finally pass. The guys who didn't pass are told. You kind of know who the guys are that aren't going to make it. For the most part, it's still super, super sketchy at the end because you just line up. We had quite a few people quit. The Cadre members really hone in on the people they hate. We had an E5 on my team that was a Ranger Tab dude from Ranger Regiment. He wasn't infantry. I forget what his MOS was, but he was not an infantry ranger, which is common. You can be a ranger from the 75th Ranger Regiment and not in the infantry. Most of them actually aren't. And he had a Ranger Tab, and he was just really arrogant and wasn't doing very good. And the benefit of being an 18 X-ray, like we discussed, is that you're graded as an 18 X-ray. And this guy was graded as an E5 sergeant with a Ranger Tab, and he was not maintaining that. So they were crushing him, and he just quit. He just flat out quit one day. This isn't really the time to quit because, kind of like Team Week, you have a certain amount of equipment that you have to take out every day. And if one person quits on your team, well, now you've got to divide that all up. Everybody's got to carry it. And it starts to get really heavy. Your rucksacks can be upwards to 70 pounds, 75, 80 pounds easy, just depending on if you're carrying the machine gun. You've got these 240s, you've got these massive weapons now that are super heavy, and you're walking 10 plus miles, sometimes doing ambushes, sometimes doing patrols. You've got to stay proficient in what you're doing and then also carry 70 something pounds on your back. The real issue in SUT is the climate and the weather. Like I was telling you guys, we had so much snow, it was miserable. Some classes, they break up in December between Christmas. You do a few weeks, then you leave for Christmas, and then you do a few more weeks. Some classes are in the summer, and they're just drenched in sweat the entire time. You get what's called prickly heat. If you don't know what that is, you will at some point during the Q course. It's when your body turns into like rashes, and it's like 1,000 needles all over your entire body. It's the most miserable thing I've ever experienced in the heat. Maybe some guys that played football for a number of years are used to it if they're from the South, but once you perspire a certain amount and you're wearing the same clothes, you get these little bumps that are like, they're not infections, but they're called prickly heat, and excruciating pain. And people will take a cardboard box or something hard from the MRE and they'll like scratch it off and it'll stop hurting as much. You got to take a shower as well. It's a terrible experience. Look it up. You'll know what it is as soon as you get to selection, probably. All right, so SUT, everything's graded. You're all done. For us, we knew the guys that were going to fail, and we knew we thought we knew who was going to fail. We thought we knew who was going to pass. And the Cadre member set us all down, and so here's how it worked out. The Cadre member took us outside. We were all standing outside in a formation, and he split us all up into 3 different groups, and he went inside. And we looked at the groups, and the groups didn't make any sense. We knew some of the guys who were like for sure going to pass. I was pretty confident that I was going to pass, but I wasn't like 100% for sure. I guess other people were more certain than I am. You always have self-doubt. But there was a few guys that I was like, there's no way these guys are passing. Like, it's just not going to happen based on their performance. But they were mixed in these 3 groups with other people. Like, one of the guys I was very certain was going to fail was standing right next to me. And we were in this group of like 4 guys. And then another group of 3 to 4 guys over there to my left. Mixed in was one guy that I knew was going to pass, I thought, and one guy that I knew was going to fail, I thought. So it didn't make any sense, and it was just a mind game. It's always mind games. And so our Cadre member, when we went in, you give him your CAT card, your military ID. He puts it in the system and it shows you all your scores and everything like that, and tells you if you're a go or no-go. And he broke us up and told us to be quiet as we stood outside. And it was really just to elicit a stressful experience for us. And it had nothing to do with the groups, because he knew that we were going to sit there and microanalyze the decision and why we were based in this group and look to our left and our right and think that we were in the group of the people that aren't going to get picked up. So it was really interesting. And he specifically told us afterwards of the guys that passed. He was like, oh, yeah, those groups meant nothing. It was literally just to mess with you guys because I knew that you would be stressed about it. So those are the type of experiences that you encounter during the entire Q course. It doesn't just stop at selection. It's throughout the whole thing. All right, so you've wrapped up SUT. You've successfully navigated one of the more harder courses in the Q course. You know exactly what you're going to be doing in terms of a patrolling standpoint. You know how to maneuver the weapons. You know how each of them functions. You know how to do all of the core infantry tasks at a very high level and leading troops into combat. You come back into Fort Bragg after SUT being in the field, and you're really in a different phase. You're in phase 3 of the Q course now. You're kind of like a junior. You're not a freshman. You're not a sophomore. You get some distinguishing factors. For us in SUT, you could wear all black uniforms as opposed to back then the Army uniforms were gray. Now they're all black, but you could drop your camelback. When you're a student, 24/7, you have to walk around with a camelback in your uniform, which is just so degrading. After you pass SUT, for clarification on the Cadre members, they have all the guys that are post-SUT not walk around with camelbacks. So that's a really good moment because you've seen guys all throughout the course walk around without camelbacks, and you just want to get to that point because you know in your heart that that's like where you want to be and it's a stepping stone. So as trivial as it sounds, taking off your camelback and walking around like an adult in an Army uniform is actually a really big deal. So you're back there at Fort Bragg, you're either at your home or you're in your barracks, and you're coming back and forth, and you're kind of waiting for the next phase, and then next phase is SERE School. You take typically a few weeks off in between. It's just like every other phase, going to depend on scheduling. Some guys take off longer than others. I think we had 5 weeks off. So it's not really off. It's not like you go home. You still have to show up every day to formation. There's typically some workouts during the day. They have some stuff for us to do. You get to do this thing where you're kind of off during the day, but you have to come back because they have to maintain accountability of you. They can't just have you leaving and driving to Raleigh for the entire week. So show up at 6:30 for a workout, leave for breakfast, come back, take a shower, all that stuff, be back at like 9:30, 10, then go through some random stuff. And then they're like, okay, leave for lunch. So from 11 to 2, you're gone. You show back up at 2:30. and which really caters to the guys that live on base or in the barracks or close. And it's just their way of kind of keeping you around for the day because there's not a lot to do with you, which is perfect. I mean, you're loving it. You get freedom. You get, your cell phone. You're living where you want to live. You can talk to your family. You can be with your family. And then you get the weekends off. You get 4-day weekends every month. USASOC has a 4-day weekend every single month of the year. So if you're in this 5-week holdover period between SUT and SERE, you get that. And that's really indicative of the entire Q course. You get to take off Fridays and Mondays all the time. Every 3 weeks, you get a 4-day weekend. That 4th weekend is off. You can take a pass, go to certain areas. As we've discussed, sometimes people just take passes and go wherever they want without even really applying and telling the Cadre members. You kind of roll the dice with that. If something happens, then you're in trouble. If nothing happens, then you're kind of free. SERE School, it has a lot of apprehension for a lot of individuals. When you start to get closer and closer to SERE School, you start to form up with your group. And what you don't realize is that SERE School is not just for Green Berets. A lot of other special operations units go to SERE School, and there's different levels to SERE School. There's 3 levels to SERE School in the United States Army, and really in the military in general. Every pilot has to go to a version of SERE School, but it's the lowest version of SERE School. And then every operator, every special operations guy goes through some derivative of SERE School, CA, PSYOP, something like that. And that's another tier. A lot of their coursework, to be frank, is online. And then there's the high risk SERE School, which is for Green Berets at Fort Bragg. It's the most intense SERE School that we have. And it's intense for a reason. There's absolutely tangible benefits to going to this school. And in reality, obviously SERE stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. You 100% are learning each of those phases throughout the entire process. So you show up back to Camp McCall, which is where selection is, which is where all these things that we've discussed are. And by then, you've seen guys that were in SERE School before. You know what it looks like to be in SERE School. You're really close to being the seniors. Post SERE School, you are the seniors. So everything's flying pretty high. You get to you take out civilian clothes and you take civilian clothes to SERE School. It's the first time you've ever done anything in civilian clothes in the military, period. So that's really neat. And it's a crawl, walk, run mentality in SERE School. They teach you the principles. They guide you through the principles. They set you off into the free to practice these principles, and then they test you on these principles. And I'm not going to go into the details of SERE School deliberately. You can find that in other avenues, and I don't want to ruin it for people. But what I'm going to talk about is some of the actual things that you learn before it gets to be a little bit more intense. You're going to learn survivability in the woods. You're going to learn how to build a snare and catch a rabbit. You're going to learn how to build a drop snatch and catch bigger game. You're going to learn how to build shelters for yourself if you're ever abandoned in the woods. You're going to learn how to eat vegetables and berries and different things in the wild if you're starving. You're going to learn all of these high-level survival skills. You're going to learn how to create a rain catch out of nothing. You're going to learn how to do all of these things with food and water that you didn't think were possible in a very controlled manner. For about 5 days, you're living out of your rucksack and you're kind of going through this course that's outdoors with some guys that are absolute studs. They were either former Green Berets or former Delta Force or former SOF in general that are now the Cadre members out there. And some of the guys out there are very famous in the special operations communities. And when you get there and you meet them, you will realize immediately that some of the movies that you've seen, these guys were the main characters. I'll leave it at that. I absolutely loved that first portion of SERE School. You get to learn how to make a fire out of nothing. You get to learn really cool, it's almost like Boy Scout stuff on steroids. It's all of the really, really high-end survival stuff that you think is really awesome in a very controlled manner where nobody's screaming at you and you've got tests to do. Nobody fails SERE School. And when you come out of it, you're like, wow, that's really cool. Now I know how to do that. And not only do you know how to do that, but you know how to look for different things in different climates and different regions of the world, not just in North Carolina. You know where to go in different areas to understand what to do. And you're really just a better man when you come out of it, because you can take that information, you can project it to someone else, you can teach your son or your daughter, you can teach some family friends, you can teach people in the military, you can teach anyone, you can teach foreign military leaders and advisors. And that's about as deep as I'm going to go with SERE School for you guys, deliberately, because I don't want to ruin it for you. It is an absolutely incredible experience, and I don't want to take anything away from it. And I want you to experience it all 100% for yourself, with your eyes wide open as a fresh person, absorbing it and getting all of the emotions and excitement and experiencing it firsthand for the first time, just like I did, because it was an amazing, amazing event for me. I'm going to pause there. I think this is a pretty good stopping point. We've gone up through SERE School. At the end of SERE School, you go into MOS phase, and from MOS, you go to language, and from language, you go to graduation. So this is the second to last episode of the Special Forces journey. We're going to dive in very granularly into the MOS phase after this. Then we're going to dive into language all in one episode, and we're going to completely wrap this thing up, and we're going to take it into the graduation week. After SERE School ends, you are a different soldier because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. There's an exit strategy. By now, you know people that have probably graduated. If you've been in the course long enough, you've got roommates in your hall, you've got guys that were ahead of you, maybe you recycled a phase, your friend knows friends, you know Green Berets at this point. This is really where it starts to come in, and people take you more seriously after SERE School, because so many people fail out of SUT, that if you're like, oh, hey, I'm post-SERE, well, they know what that means. That means that you're 75% there. You're on the downhill slope. The only problem is a lot of people still fail MOS, but you are still on the downhill slope. You're closer than all those other people below you. Look forward to diving into all that stuff. You guys enjoy your week. And thank you for subscribing and listening to the Operators Association podcast.